I was a farmer in Zimbabwe in November 1993, and Concorde was sent out to Zimbabwe on a 4-day tourist charter, and British Airways decided while it was there to put on this demonstration flight, and they made available to the public 100 seats for sale, and they were quite reasonable too. I think it cost me about $500 for my seat. And this was a 2-hour flight on Concorde, and the captain gave us a commentary the whole time about what was going on, and we all had to go at the flight, had a look at the flight deck. And I took a lot of video on this flight, but old Steve Rogers here has rationed us, I'm afraid, to about 8 minutes. So he put this video of 8 minutes onto our website on the old Fliers group about 2 years ago. Now that has all the sound in it, the captain's commentary. Today we're not going to give you the sound because it wouldn't be heard by most. But so if you're interested in actually hearing the commentary as well, you can go onto the internet. So now we'll show you the film, and then I will make comments afterwards about the flight. Now that's walking up to Concorde to take my seat, and we were allowed to stroll around the aircraft and have a good look, and it was much, much bigger and more impressive than I ever imagined. As you can see, it's a huge aeroplane. And there's the captain saying hello. It could be a white pointer, actually. Look at those intakes. That's the huge intakes. He wasn't aboard, fortunately. Yeah. That's inside, pretty cramped. And a huge crowd were watching. And our takeoff. I think we left the deck at about 200 miles an hour. Now there you've got the mark meter on the left and the altimeter on the right. And so that we monitored. That was actually in the cabin, on the front of the cabin wall. And you can see that as we go along, we're cruising subsonic at 29,000 feet, so we didn't break windows down below. And we went to the coast at that speed, at 0.97, which is just below this. They're now going through the sound barrier. There was no visible feeling at all of going through the sound barrier. And we went through at 30,000 feet. This was over the sea now. And now, as you can see, he opened up his throttles and lit his afterburner, and the speed and altitude went up very rapidly after this. Mark 1.88 and 48,000 feet. That's our Minister of Agriculture. Knew him well. His name's Dennis Norman. Me too. Now I mentioned it was, that's on the flight deck. I'll talk about this later. That's the captain talking to us. Unfortunately you can't hear what he's saying. I'll tell you later what he said. And we were able to all go to the flight deck and have a good look around. It was very impressive. The glasses he's wearing was probably to protect his eyes in case the canopy shattered. So you can see it's pretty cramped in there. Very narrow, yes. And we actually got up to 60,000 feet, which is, I think, more. I can beat all of you here today. That's looking over the Zimbabwe countryside, very dry at the time, just before the rain started. That's a 26-degree angle of attack. That's Harare Airport. Well, the big disappointment was getting into Concorde. As you could see, it was a very cramped cabin, and the seats were pretty cramped, and the windows were small and set up too high. I found great difficulty putting my video camera out to take video, so it wasn't a comfortable cabin at all. We sat there, we strapped ourselves in and sat there for the next 20 minutes really sweating it out because there seemed to be no air conditioning for us and it was a really hot day. But when those engines started, those huge engines, we were pretty well insulated from the sound. But looking out, you could see the spectators were having a tough time of it with the noise. As you can imagine, the takeoff run was pretty impressive, and we went up like a rocket. And as you can see by the angle of attack, the pilot had to lower his cockpit. The whole cockpit was lowered by 5 degrees, so you could continue seeing the runway on takeoff and landing. And that added an extra 1.5 tons to the weight of the Concorde, that mechanism. Now, once we got airborne, we had to fly for half an hour from Harare to the Mozambique coast because we couldn't go supersonic over land, it's banned. And it was a very uncomfortable flight because it was a hot day and we were being buffeted by thermals coming up from the ground below. But once we transitioned through the sound barrier and gained altitude, the flight was absolutely smooth, completely smooth. And that's when we were all invited to take our turn to go onto the flight deck. When I got into the flight deck, the view was absolutely spectacular. You could see a dark blue sky, and you could see the curvature of the Earth. For any of you members of the Flat Earth Society, I'm afraid that's bad news. And the captain turned around, as you saw in the video, and said to me, the outside temperature is 71 degrees centigrade, and the skin of the Concorde is 91 degrees centigrade. He says, I'm now going to slow down and descend, so if you see any cracks around you, don't put your hand into them because the aircraft's going to shrink 20 centimeters. That's what he actually said. And I went back to my seat and we had that flight back, rough flight back to Harare, but with champagne being served, it was much more pleasant. When we got to Harare, the captain announced he was going to do a low-level run over the main runway, which is 06, and he did it at, or very low, and at Mark point 8. Now this brought memories back to me, because I'd served in the Rhodesian Air Force 28 years before, and I'd flown a Vampire over the same runway at the same speed, and it just brought back memories. And I actually did most of my flying training at this particular airfield for my 2 years in the Rhodesian Air Force in 54 to 56. After we landed, I caught my flight back to Bulawayo, my hometown, in a 737. Now I remember thinking to myself, now this is comfort. Now, I'm going to tell you a story now that you might or might not believe, but I can assure you it's true. Prior to my flight on Concorde, for the previous 2 or 3 months, I've been suffering very severe kidney pains. They were so bad that my doctor couldn't diagnose the problem, and they were so bad that I almost gave away my flight, my seat on Concorde. From that day to this, which is 23 years ago, I haven't had those pains again. So I'll give you my theories over a beer afterwards, if you like. And that's it, I'm afraid.
Worth the investment.